Good evening, you're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Azam Khan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. After 3 years, the border with the mainland will be fully reopened on Monday. Train services to Lo Wu are set to return to pre-COVID frequencies. And Beijing warns against speculation after a balloon, claimed to be a Chinese spy device, is seen over the United States. The border with the mainland will be fully reopened from Monday, with the daily quota and PCR test scrapped. All land crossing will also be back in service. Macy Mock reports.
全面通關，全開放通關。
Chief Executive John Lee announced that after 3 years, the border with the mainland will be fully reopened from Monday, as daily COVID cases have dropped by 80% since quarantine-free travel to the north resumed. Over 770,000 people have traveled to the mainland since January the 8th. In the latest move, travelers between Hong Kong and the mainland will no longer have to take PCR tests. The 50,000 daily quota for arrivals and the same number for departures will be dropped, and people will not have to book a slot to cross the border. However, PCR tests are still required for those who have stayed overseas or in Taiwan within 7 days before entering the mainland. All cross-border checkpoints will reopen, including Lo Wu and Heung Yun Wai. At the Lok Ma Chau checkpoint, travelers can board buses to the mainland. Cargo transport at Sha Chau Kok will resume. Those coming to Hong Kong from Macau will not have to take a rapid antigen test before departure. Unvaccinated people will be permitted to enter Hong Kong, but those arriving from places other than the mainland still have to take a self-administered test.
The reason for keeping it for a while is also that the normal travel resumption with the mainland will involve a lot of people traveling across the boundary, and that will be a big number. And in order to ensure that we will be able to control the risk, then I think we should keep the RAT requirement for people coming into Hong Kong from overseas so as to protect the overall public health of the people.
With restrictions being dropped, all cross-border students can return to Hong Kong for face-to-face lessons for the first time in 3 years. They will not have to apply for quotas or take PCR tests. Secondary school students can resume in-class lessons from next Wednesday, while primary, kindergarten, and special needs pupils can return to their Hong Kong campuses on the 22nd of this month. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
People on both sides of the border have given the thumbs up to the scrapping of PCR tests for travelers. However, a tourism official played down hopes of an influx of mainland tour groups. Janice Lowe has the story.
The decision to scrap PCR tests for trips to the mainland was welcomed by many, including this woman who only crossed the border once since the pandemic. This is because she found the test too troublesome. Now I will go to the mainland more often as I no longer have to take PCR tests, she said. This man has already undergone a test, but he hailed the new arrangement, saying it allows people to travel freely between the two places. For mainlanders, To Kwa Wan used to be one of their favorite places. But COVID forced the closure of many shops because of the lack of customers. There are still signs reminding mainlanders not to block pavements. These local residents do not expect mainland visitors to gather in the area like they used to. It's even better if the travelers can bring prosperity to Hong Kong, this lady said. But this man, who lived in To Kwa Wan for 7 years, isn't too enthusiastic. It's a nuisance. We probably have to share the road with cars, he added. Timothy Choi, director of the Travel Industry Council, expects only 3 mainland tours at most to head to Hong Kong each day. but he thinks the number will probably increase slightly by mid-year. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The MTR Corporation expects services to return to pre-COVID levels when East Rail Line trains to Lo Wu Station resume running on Monday.
There's around 10 trains per hour going to the Lo Wu Station, and the running capacity, we believe we could actually cope with the demand. On top of the train service arrangement, we also deploy extra staff along the East Rail Line, particularly Sham Shui and Lo Wu Station, to assist passengers to crossing the boundary.
During the 3 years that COVID forced the closure of Lo Wu Station, a revamp was carried out. The customer service center and ticket machines were moved to the side of the lobby to create more space for people to go to the checkpoint. Several shops in the station have begun preparing to reopen next week. The chief executive has come out against setting up an independent committee to review the government's handling of the pandemic.
We should do lesson learning, but we have been doing lesson learning since day one. I also want to focus the energy of the government on developing the economy. So I'm doing this in a very pragmatic manner. So on the one hand, we'll do our lesson learning. We'll update what has been good practices and successful practices into our guidelines so that we'll be able to deal with future challenges.
Lee also said the government is considering whether to preserve an unused emergency hospital and COVID isolation cabins. Some may be used for short-term purposes, such as youth hostels. The Academy of Medicine says only about 10 non-locally trained doctors have been approved to work in Hong Kong since the scheme was rolled out 2 years ago.
The actual number of applications was about, I think, 40 plus. However, many of them were found to be not eligible by the hospital authority. The remaining ones had been referred to the academy and being vetted. So the number of doctors who actually applied was about 40, but many of them were not actually prima facie eligible because of their residency status, etc.
Under its primary healthcare blueprint, the government hopes to reform the medical system by shifting the focus from treatment to early prevention. Leung said at least 100 doctors have to be trained each year to meet demand. Beijing has called for calm following reports that an alleged Chinese spy balloon has been hovering over a sensitive site in the United States. Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning also warned against speculation before the facts are established. She said China has no intention of violating the airspace of other countries and is looking into the reports. The balloon is at an altitude above commercial air traffic. It was spotted over the state of Montana, where an Air Force base stores intercontinental ballistic missiles. President Joe Biden heeded military advice not to shoot down the balloon because debris could endanger safety. The reports come just days before U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits Beijing. Russia has marked the 80th anniversary of its victory over Nazi German forces in the Battle of Stalingrad, with President Vladimir Putin insisting that Moscow will not be defeated in a war. The anniversary of the battle that's regarded as the turning point in the Second World War was marked with a military parade in Volgograd, the new name for Stalingrad. Putin did not attend the parade, but he laid a wreath at the Eternal Flame memorial to honor the 1 million Soviet soldiers killed in the fighting. In a speech later, the Russian leader said it was ironic that Moscow will again be facing German tanks, referring to the Leopard tanks that Berlin is sending to Ukraine. He added that although the West continues to arm Ukraine, Russia has the means to respond. The Jewish settler population in the occupied West Bank has jumped to more than 500,000. More settlements are expected under Israel's new ultra-nationalist government. The number of Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank has surpassed 500,000. The phenomenal growth of settlements has squeezed out the Palestinians. They see the settlements as a land grab that undermines their hopes of establishing a viable, contiguous state.
These settlers today have 15 members in the Israeli parliament out of 120. They have become a very important and strong elective force, but also they have become in charge of the reality because all of them are armed and many of them are attacking Palestinian civilians everywhere.
Many Palestinians live in fear.
Life is terrible and we don't feel safe at all. We've been suffering since they put the settlement up here. We've been suffering, we've been going through a lot of troubles with the soldiers.
As evidence, Al-Qadar showed the collection of sound grenade and smoke grenade canisters that were fired at his roof and garden. Much of the international community views the settlements as illegitimate and an obstacle to peace. But settlers disagree.
You have to understand that we're talking about a number of people that have set their homes here, that have built their businesses here, sent their kids to the educational system here, and it's a significant amount of people that is already a fact that you can't just erase or not take into account or think that it's going to disappear if things get a bit harder.
A new spasm of violence has shaken the region recently, raising tensions in a volatile area. Retail sales in Hong Kong rose in December on improved sentiment after falling in November. Retailers raked in $37.7 billion in December, up 1.1% from a year earlier, following a 4.1% decline in the previous month. For the whole of last year, sales eased slightly from 2021 to $350 billion. The government is optimistic of an improvement this year, with tourists returning as Hong Kong rebounds after COVID. Hong Kong stocks ended the week in a negative territory as mainland funds continued offloading shares. The Hang Seng Index closed 1.4% lower. Bearish block trades towards the end of the session saw property management firm CG Services tumble 7.2%. BYD dropped 2.7% after it was revealed that Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway had further lowered its stake in the electric car maker. HSBC lost 3% as the Hong Kong dollar weakened after rate hikes in Europe. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed down 298 points. Top 10 active stocks, Tencent closed up $2 and Alibaba was down $2.90. Ping An was down $2.50 and AIA Insurance down 40 cents. Forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 8.57, the Australian dollar at 5.53. Over in Europe, the London FTSE is currently up 19 points. On to the weather now. It'll be overcast with occasional rain tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 16 and 18 degrees, becoming warmer in the following days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Friday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Azam Khan. Thanks for watching. Good night.